Dragon Ball Z is kind of this cultural phenomenon, not only for us like anime fans, but just kind of in general.
It's bigger than anime.
It's bigger than anime. It's one of those things that's transcended the anime niche market, and I think a lot of it has to do with the timing. When it came out, there was nothing like it in existence here in the U.S., and it really brought out this new excitement for cartoons in general, not just anime. And the storylines, the character development is a huge part of Dragon Ball.
Journey to the West.
Yeah.
Well, the oldest book ever it's based off of, so I think they know a thing or two from the storyline there.
Who hasn't seen or heard of Dragon Ball Z?
One day I happened to just flip through the channels, and I'll never forget the episode either. It was during the Great Saiyaman saga, and it was when Gohan was trying to get into school and he couldn't find any friends, and I was like, this is interesting. So I kept watching, and once I knew the characters' names, that was it. I had to keep watching.
Schemmel, because he voices my favorite character. I always thought he did a really good job voicing Goku.
I go back to a day I made a choice, and from that choice, I'm sitting here with you. That day is I was married at the time, and I was at the North Park Center, and I had visited this marionette theater looking for a bee puppet for a brass quintet thing. And I had visited once, I couldn't find it. We were about to leave. There's an escalator by the puppet theater. I put my foot on the escalator, and I can visualize looking and putting my foot on the escalator, looking up at the theater and going, I'm gonna go in there one more time, just to see if they had this puppet. So the day I went in that time, there was a different guy there who happened to own the theater. He saw me goofing around the puppets and thought, you might be good at this. You wanna do this. So from there, I started working at the puppet theater, not doing voices, but controlling puppets. And then I was always doing voices around the theater, usually doing an impression of the guy who owned the theater, talk like this. He goes, you do good voices, you want to do voices on my show? And so I pre-recorded the show, and we did marionette stuff there. And I met someone else who worked there, who's an actor and was like looking for acting work all the time. And they were like, dude, you do voice on the show? You need to audition for this. There's an ad for this national cartoon. I'm like, no, I want to be a French horn teacher, player, because that's what I was doing. I was a professional French horn player, freelance in orchestras, and I had a studio of about 30 students. It's like, I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna do that. Like, no, I'm not gonna do that. I don't want to do that. They're bugging me. So I call up Chris Sabat, who I don't know at the time. I was like, calling up. And then we were required to mimic the original cast from Canadian cast. And then we went in for the audition, and I didn't even think about Goku. I mean, I auditioned for it. I thought about Captain Ginyu and Yamcha maybe. I was so sure I got Captain Ginyu, and I called Chris. Then I called him every day. Anything going on? I was so naive and so clueless as to how to behave professionally when it comes to those things. But even when I went to my audition, I took all the voices from my puppet theater stuff, which I'd done quite a few, maybe 4 or 5, I don't know, quite a few for me at the time. And put it on a tape, and put my resume, typed on my resume, wore a nice outfit, wearing there, Barry's there, my first producer, like, hey Sean, what we can do some Goku, some Kamehamehas. He's like, kind of like Bill Clinton in a way, but different. So he called me up, I get to work, and I'm thinking, well, Captain Ginyu, he's like, shut up, you're gonna be Goku, blah, blah, blah. And so I get to work, and I'm walking down the hallway, and I see these pictures of Goku, right? I'm like, this is gonna be pretty cool. I guess this character's kind of important. After my first few reacts, and Barry's there. After a few takes, I'm talking about the character, trying to develop it. Chris goes, this is the main character for the show. And I was like, oh, well, that changes everything. So then I was like, I have to make everything even more perfect. So I'm gonna make every single fight reaction different. Now, for those of you who watch the show, you know how many fight reacts are in DBZ? I think in one episode, I had 300, in one episode. And I'm gonna make every one uniquely different. And I still try it. It's never, For the first season, I thought I was doing it. I'm like, yeah, we recorded 77 episodes that year. I was like, we're gonna do all the fight reacts different. No, it was like, no, but it was thrilling. It was really cool.
And then of course the action. I mean, the action was unheard of at the time. To see this level of action in a animated.
You didn't see that in G.I. Joe.
No,
you didn't see that in Pokemon. You didn't see that in stuff in the afternoons.
Yeah, and I think this influenced a lot of people's lives. I mean, it influenced my life a ton. I'm an example of these persons that went into martial arts specifically because I enjoyed watching Dragon Ball Z as a kid. I mean, it was like a big deal.
I would say it's a coming of age in a sense. I mean, you see from DBZ, you'll see Gohan go from being this little kid that doesn't really understand anything that's really happening. And then, as the series progresses, he starts, coming of age in himself, and then you see him end up being the one to fight Cell and defeat Cell, with the help of a little father-son Kamehameha. But I think that's the best part about it. A lot of kids could relate to it in a sense with anything that they do.
I watched all the old DBZ stuff over and over and over and over, trying to stay consistent. I remember I met a friend of mine at a party, and he's like, yeah, they changed all the voices on Dragon Ball Z except Goku's. I'm like, no, they didn't. They changed that too. He goes, how do you know? Because I like playing him. And the fact that I could fool an old friend, because I'd really tried to nail that, really get the inflections right. I didn't settle into the voice being my own until really taking it over as my own thing, which it's been since the Frieza saga from the old Z. And we didn't start till the Ginyu saga, so it's not the beginning. We started the Ginyu saga, and we went back and recorded the original stuff like 3, 4, 5, 6 years later. So by the time we got to Frieza, then I was really settling into mine. And I like to do it one at a time, but if I need to do it, and every once in a while I would do it, it'd be like, you know, Goku, I'm here to train you. I would only train you if you tell me a joke. A joke? I just want to, you know, or something, you know, it's not a problem. It's just easier to do it all one at a time. That was that impression. What's really hard is when you go back and forth between your acts. What? You know, or going back and forth, or if you have to do like a really extreme voice. I did like this show called Thumb Wrestling Federation. I played like 12 different thumbs, and every once in a while I would just do the dialogue with myself. I could do the dialogue with myself. I like to do it better because you're in the inflections and tones of the character. When I watch it back, the thing I listen for as an actor is when I watch it back, is if I don't think it sounds like me, or if I love telling people to this day who still don't know I play King Kai that I do it. Or people who don't, if they know it's me, unless it's my natural speaking voice, I haven't done my job right. If I'm changing the voice in any way, I don't want you to know it's me. That's like a big deal. So it's like, oh yeah, I can totally tell. I can totally tell it's you. And I'm like, oh. But the only ones who can tell it's me when I'm doing XYZ voices that are not like my natural voice are people who really follow my work. Most of the time I'll say, yeah, I did Rio and Amidamaro and Shaman King. They didn't believe I'm talking like this guy. And then talking like Antonio Banderas and doing the whole, you know, I want to do a totally completely different voice. Or if I had to do Black Doom, I did this crazy. For like 14 hours in this one show, they go, they didn't affect that? Do you have a thing in your throat? I'm like, yes, that's the goal. I don't want you to know it's me, unless it's me talking as me. So Goku's close to my natural speaking voice now. I've let it settle in, kind of, but still the diction's different and the inflection's different. So, and you know, only time it comes out if I'm ever yelling or in karate class, I'll bust out Kiai. And some of the kids, not kids, they're adults, are Dragon Ball Z fans, and after they found out, you know, we holding the pose, I'm like, yes, gorgeous. You know, and I'm like a white belt, like, what, you know. So that's exciting. That's really cool.
Did you get to have a moment with martial arts and Sean Schemmel?
I did. So at New York Comic Con, actually New York Comic Con,
here, yeah.
A few years back, I was backstage with Sean Schemmel, who's the voice of Goku. And he started practicing martial arts. He's doing Shotokan karate, and I've been doing Kenju Ryu, which is another form of karate. And he was like, hey, what have you been working on? And it's like, oh, I'm doing this and that and this and this. And he's like, oh, let me show me how you're doing that. And so I'm showing him karate moves, and in my 9-year-old inner child brain, I'm exploding that I'm teaching Goku how to do karate. And so that was like, that's my like,
see side, like,
yeah,
like nonstop. Yeah.
When we had this old guy who was working at Funimation who honestly, you know, really screwed up our first Comic-Con because he made a big table for all the Dragon Ball Z toys, but he didn't set up room for us to sign. So because of that, our booth was right next to Wendy Penny's booth, and we had to sit with our table sticking into the Elf Festival. Well, it turns out Wendy Penny is a huge Dragon Ball Z fan. She told me, actually, I stopped drawing at 3 or 4 o'clock and I go downstairs and watch Dragon Ball Z. So she sits down, she lets us in the booth, and she's also a very metaphysical, very spiritual person. She walks to me and she goes, you're the voice of Goku, right? I'm like, well, yeah, that's what I'm doing. She's like, do you believe in synchronicity? And I go, I don't know, what is that? She goes, we need to have dinner. So I sat down with her and she told me the story of the Monkey King, the story of the whole history of the Great Journey West, and really told me how important on some metaphysical and spiritual level, how seriously I must take this. I was already taking it serious as an artist, but as a psycho-spiritual kind of, this is kind of gonna affect a lot of people because it's not just a great anime, it's the retelling of an ancient Asian myth. And there's a bunch of other weird metaphysical things in my life, like being born in the year of the monkey, my grandmother calling me monkey boy, running around naked, and there's dimples at the base of my spine, and they go, oh, that's where they ripped off your tail. They'd say that to me when I was a boy. My grandmother, I'd be running around naked after a bath, and my grandma go, there you go, monkey boy, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm running around doing stuff. I go, see that right there, those dimples? That's where they ripped your tail off. That, you know what I'm saying, you watch the show, freaked me out. So I'm like, all right, this is what I do. This is why I'm on Earth, this is what I do. for now, and we're coming to a massive end of the chapter, which is a huge chapter for me, massive chapter for me.
Dragon Ball Z was my favorite show growing up. It was my favorite anime, it still is. And, you know, Goku is just, you know, he's good-hearted, but he's still strong and likes to fight and protect his friends. And I always thought that was really cool.
For me, I would say it has kind of dual part in the people that created the show, like Akira Toriyama, and also with Funimation and how they did their dubbing and the voices that they chose for the characters. I feel like they are so timeless and they're done so well that it brings the characters to life to the point where they capture you. You want to be with this character. You get emotionally involved. You love these characters. They become part of your family. And the art style just also plays along on that too. It's ageless. It'll always look good. Even when I'm 50, I will have my grandchildren. I will introduce them to Dragon Ball Z because everyone has to know how to do Kamehameha.
Everybody needs to know how to do that.
Getting the fight reacts down and and trying to divorce myself from Speed Racer reacts, which I love, and got to meet Peter Fernandez before he died, and that was an amazing thrill for me. But wrapping my head around the character and what Barry wanted, and the fact that we were chasing tape, so every take was just a lot of time between takes, and I tended to want to go, 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 go. And now that I've been doing this for so long, when I direct shows, keeping the actor warm, you want to keep those long breaks, no, you want to keep the flow going. It was a long day, it was really exciting. I forgot what I did after that. It was the Ginyu, it was the first fight when Goku shows up, and I remember my first react, like this, and he's doing like this, and then he's like, yeah, and doing that thing. I remember that, but I remember that was the day I remember thinking a lot about how I was gonna make every fight react different.
I think that's the thing, and I think a lot of people feel this way. Again, you're not too old because it still speaks to people at any age.
It's bigger than anything that's going to be out there. I mean, most people compare like to Star Wars. Star Wars blew up and became, well, what Star Wars is. It's more of a cultural feeling than just a series of movies. Dragon Ball Z is that same kind of way. Is people I know out there, again, they watch it over and over again, but the ones that have been seeing, like, oh, I've seen it in years, and then you see them like go back to that fond memory, and like either really want to watch it now, or it's like always good feelings, always good things, and basically life choices to just good fashion entertainment.
I think from the uniqueness of Dragon Ball Z, like branched out all these different animes, which really kind of similar but not, which kind of made the Funimation channel grow. I mean, I really enjoy every single anime that Funimation puts out.
Contrasting between Barry and Chris, Barry's a man of few words when it comes to direction. Both of them tend to trust the talent. I'm a big believer in trusting the talent, because if you direct a show and it's all your vision, I work with a couple of directors that do this, and I did it maybe my first show, and I learned, you know, I shouldn't do this. If I've got a melodic line in my head on how I want it to sound, and I do that for every character, it's a one-note show. If I let actors bring their melodies to the table, it becomes greater than the sum of its parts. So I figured that out after, you know, directing a couple of volumes of an anime, you know, years later. Of course, in Dragon Ball Z land, there's some emotional depth in some storylines, but usually when Goku's around, it's happy or angry, high stakes or fun. There's basically 3 or 4 emotions you're dealing with, you know. We used to do, when I started, I would do things in like 12 to 20 takes. It took forever. We were chasing tape too, so it was rewind time, you know, because we were syncing to Digibeta. Maybe it's Digibeta, I don't know what it was, Betamax, I don't know what the hell it was, but now I do it in like 1 to 3 takes, usually 1 or 2 takes, because we do it so long, it's like, and they write it so much better, so it just fits. Dialogue's easy. It was the screaming and doing the Super Saiyan transformations, which were like many minutes long, which, you know, as you know, those are all real, by the way, and yours are sucking up air, and like, as long as you can, and you know, if you don't do it right, you gotta do it again. So I'm like, okay, let's watch it several times, because you only get about 3 of these, otherwise then my voice is gone, or you take a break or whatever. So as far as wearing me down, it would energize me. I would be worn down emotionally because of it, but not physically. And now it's more because I take so much more in when I go to conventions, because I'm more open to that. It's a real delayed gratification of doing the work and then going and meeting kids and letting that in is a really recharging. It's a really, really awesome thing. I say kids, I met a 40-year-old man cried when he met me. So I'm like, you know, it doesn't matter.
Funimation growing, like I didn't really know what Japanese animation was, and like I was introduced to Gundam and stuff like that, but I didn't really know anything. And when Dragon Ball Z came out, it introduced me, like I said earlier. And since Dragon Ball Z, Funimation has produced so many quality animes?
Well, over the years, it just started dubbing a lot more and more anime that I actually enjoyed. You know, starting of course with the big ones like Yu Yu Hakusho, you know, Dragon Ball Z. And you know, I grew up with those shows, and eventually I started seeing other shows that ended up being dubbed by Funimation.
Funimation has changed as a company. They were started out as a small group of people, a lot of business guys, not a lot of creative types, not a lot of people, necessarily looking at the big picture of continuity, and it was just business decisions. But now Funimation is like, we fly actors in, we dub things just like the Japanese. I mean, I'm so thrilled with the direction that what Funimation has become is what I personally always wanted it to be. And it was good when it started, it's just better now, frankly. Just like the show got better with Kai, everything's better. The point is this, when I first started Dragon Ball Z, I moved to New York without telling Barry. And I knew that they had already placed another actor, and I didn't want to do it. And there were two reasons I didn't like when they changed voice when I was a kid on shows. And I knew that if I had children someday, I wanted to make sure that if there's any project I ever worked on, or anything, well, not any project, but this project, other projects maybe not so much, but this one, I was not letting this go, absolutely not. So I moved to New York, flew back on my own dime, because if I told him, I had to pay for it. And then when I finally told them, like, well, you can't cover that. And then finally they did. They finally was like, okay, we can put you pay for some airfares, all right. So finally did that, which was nice, it's cool. But the reason I did it and spent my own money and did that, I'm like, I don't know if I'm having kids, but my sisters are. And when this is all done, I'm doing all the Z, all the movies, all the games, so that there's a body of work that if I die when this is over, prosperity, that's my legacy if that's it. I mean, I'd love to do other stuff, but if that was the sole motivation behind making sure that not just my prosperity, but fans who watch the show especially.
Because of Dragon Ball Z starting in the first place and being popular in America, it's, so to speak, broke open a lot of Americans' minds towards anime in the first place. It was something that a lot of Americans could adapt into, and because of that, it formed an entry point for a lot of folks to get into anime in the first place.
When I talk to kids at conventions, I talk to them about that. Like, you think you want to be a voice actor, and you might want to be, but really you just want to be awesome. And you want to be awesome because this show makes you feel awesome, and you want to be that awesome, but how to figure, you may not want to be, or you may not have the skill for it, or you may, so my goal is to get them to find things in their life to, how do you become awesome if you want to be a doctor, or if you want to be a computer programmer? Like, finding the thing that lights up your head. You think voice acting does now, and maybe that's true, but when you get older, you might go, well, actually, that show inspired me to find a way to be awesome, or whatever, and finding those things and bringing them into, what you're doing, and pulling from all different, angles.
Keep doing the work, guys. You guys are awesome. We appreciate everything you do. Thank you very much.
It's a gift that keeps on giving, I think that's how I feel about it. It's been a life-changing experience.